Ever heard of a show ending so chaotically, so unbelievably over the top, that it's still talked about decades later?
What's fascinating here, is that we often crave resolution, especially in stories. But sometimes it's the unresolved stuff, the what ifs. Those are the things that can linger in our minds even more, I think.
And that's what makes our deep dive today so interesting. We're going back to the Colbys Season 2, and, well, you could call it a masterclass in soap opera excess, family feuds, and a cliffhanger ending that you just have to see it to believe it.
I think you're right. And we're not just, going over the plot points. We're really trying to unpack what made this season such a unique thing in 80s primetime television. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, exactly. The Colbys was a spin-off of Dynasty, right?
Yeah.
Which was already known for, its dramatic flair. But this season, it's like they took everything up a notch.
Yeah, they turned it up to 11, for sure.
Uh-huh, exactly. Think international intrigue, love affairs gone wrong, and even, get this, a touch of sci-fi.
Yeah, it's almost as if the writers took everything that made Dynasty a hit and just decided, let's see how far we can push this. All within a single short season. Wild.
Okay, so to set the stage for this wild ride, let's do a quick character catch-up. We've got Jason Colby, the wealthy patriarch, still caught in a web spun by his ex-wife, Sable.
Sable, oh man.
The woman who could give Alexis Carrington a run for her money in the ruthlessness department.
And she does not disappoint this season. No, if anything, Sable's machinations, they reach new heights this time around. She's really at the heart of many of the season's twists and turns, constantly manipulating those around her to, well, to gain power and control, like always.
Speaking of Sable and her scheming, this season throws a real wrench into Jason's budding romance with Francesca.
Oh, yeah. Jason's attempts to move on from his, shall we say, tumultuous relationship with Sable are, well, they're immediately complicated by the return of someone we thought we'd seen the last of, Francesca's presumed dead husband, Philip.
Talk about a ghost from the past, right? It's like the second he reappeared, any hope for a peaceful resolution to the Jason-Sable-Francesca love triangle, it just vanished.
Well, it speaks to a theme you see a lot, not just in this show, but in many soap operas, right?
Yeah.
The past has a way of catching up to the present. You can't outrun it, no matter how much you try.
And in the world of the Colbys, the past is rarely simple or straightforward. This season throws curveball after curveball at these characters, like Monica.
Oh, right. Jason's sister.
Yeah, exactly. She gets a blast from the past when her son, who we met briefly back in the Dynasty days, suddenly re-enters her life.
Yeah, you have to remember that Monica gave him up years ago. So their reunion, it's further complicated by, you guessed it, Sable.
Of course.
Seeing a vulnerable Monica with a newfound connection, Sable just inserts herself into the situation. And that leads to a pretty intense custody battle.
Sable just can't resist getting involved, can she? It's like she thrives on chaos and conflict. But the writers, they didn't stop there. The outline mentioned Fallon dealing with marital issues of her own, facing a very dramatic pregnancy.
Right, the paternity is a big question mark for a good portion of the season, just adding another layer of suspense to an already tangled web of relationships.
It seems like everyone on the show is connected, but, and maybe this is obvious, those connections are rarely simple. But beyond the relationship drama, there's this sense of urgency this season. Almost like the writers knew they had a limited amount of time to just cram in as much excitement as possible.
And they definitely didn't hold back, no. This season, it even brings back the Cold War as a backdrop, particularly with Jason's niece, Bliss, falling for a, Russian dancer.
Yeah.
So you have this classic forbidden love story, but it's made even more complicated by, well, the political climate of the time.
And speaking of complicated, we can't forget about the ongoing feud between Jason Sable and Jason's brother, Miles.
Oh, yeah. That sibling rivalry is, well, let's just say it's amplified this season. And it's all fueled by Sable's constant meddling, of course.
Right.
She uses Miles to get at Jason. And it creates a really complex power dynamic within the family.
Seriously, it's like the Colby family is a powder keg, and Sable is holding a lit match, just waiting for the right moment to drop it. And with everything else going on, the show still manages to weave in these intensely personal, almost Shakespearean family conflicts.
That's a good point. It's that blend of high-stakes drama and intimate family betrayals that just keeps you hooked. You can kind of see reflections of your own family dynamics, but like amplified and with a way bigger budget. And shoulder pads. Lots of shoulder pads.
Okay, so we've got love triangle, surprise returns, custody battles, Cold War romances, and enough family drama to fuel like a dozen therapy sessions. But you mentioned it earlier, this season is really known for how it ends.
And that, my friend, is a story for another part of our deep dive.
All right, so cliffhanger time. And trust me, after that whirlwind of plot points, you're definitely going to need a seatbelt for this one.
Oh, absolutely. Remember how we were talking about the writers taking the drama up to 11?
Yeah.
Well, the season finale, it's like they found a way to take it to 12.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding.
Okay. So give us the rundown. What kind of chaos did the Colbys leave us with? Lay it on us.
Okay, so let's start with Francesca. Remember Philip, her not-so-departed husband?
How could we forget?
Right. Well, things get really intense between them, ending in get this dramatic car crash. And here's the kicker. The season ends with Francesca's fate totally unknown. Like, did she survive? We have no idea.
A car crash cliffhanger? Wow, that's like classic soap opera stuff. But something tells me they didn't stop there, did they?
Oh, you know they didn't. While all that's happening, we have Sable, always the opportunist, right? She decides to take matters into her own hands with Monica's son.
Oh boy, with the custody battle.
Yeah, exactly. But she ups the ante. Sable kidnaps him, straight up.
Sable, you absolutely, that's cold. Even for her. But wait, there's more, isn't there? What about Fallon and her, situation?
Oh, right, Fallon. Okay, so she's pregnant, emotionally drained, caught up in her own drama, and ends up stranded in the desert. And then, and I'm not making this up, she gets abducted by aliens.
Wait, are you serious? Aliens, like from outer space?
I'm completely serious. It's this moment that just perfectly sums up the sheer audacity of the Colbys Season 2. It's wild, it's outlandish, it's completely unforgettable.
And the real kicker, they never resolved any of it. The show got canceled just like that, leaving those cliffhangers hanging forever.
It really does make you wonder. It's almost as if the writers knew their time was limited, So they decided to go out with the biggest bang possible. And I have to say, they definitely created a television moment that, to this day, just fascinates and frustrates viewers.
I can only imagine the fan theories that came out after that finale. Like, did Francesca live? Where did Sable take Monica's son? And what about Fallon's close encounter?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of what makes the Colbys Season 2 such a unique case study in television history. It's like this time capsule of 80s excess, this testament to the power of a good cliffhanger. And, maybe a reminder that sometimes the stories that stick with us the most are the ones that are, left untold.
Right. It's like we, the audience, become the writers. We're left to think about what could have been to fill in those blanks ourselves.
Exactly. So I'm curious, what do you think happened after that final fade out? How would you have wrapped up those cliffhangers?
Oh, man. Where do I even begin? Okay. With Francesca, I'm going to go with amnesia. She wakes up from the crash, doesn't remember Philip, and then bam, has to rediscover her love for Jason.
I like it. Classic soap opera trope.
Yeah.
Very fitting. What about Sable and, Monica's son?
Okay, knowing Sable, she totally faked his death, whisked him off to some, remote location where Monica could never find them, and, raise him in secret, and then boom, he comes back years later as a pawn in another one of her schemes.
Oh, that's good. Intriguing. All right. What about Fallon and the alien abduction?
Honestly, I'm at a complete loss. It's just so out there. Maybe she comes back with, superpowers. Or maybe it was all just a dream. Part of me wants to believe they would have gone full Dynasty. Leaned into the sci-fi of it all.
It's really interesting that you say that about Dynasty. The Colbys was always walking this line between trying to recapture that same magic as its predecessor, but also, trying to be its own thing.
That's a really good point. I mean, it had some big shoes to fill and only had, 2 seasons to do it?
Exactly. And yet, even with it ending so abruptly, the Colbys Season 2, it left its mark on pop culture. It was different. It pushed boundaries. They really embraced the outrageous.
Yeah, a legacy built on what we saw, but also what we didn't.
And that, my friend, is a fascinating story in itself.
It's weird, right? The Colbys Season 2, it's almost like it became this legend, not because it, tied everything up in a neat little bow, but because it didn't.
You're absolutely right. It's that abrupt ending, all those crazy cliffhangers. They're a part of the show's history now. This reminds us that sometimes you can find success even in failure.
And let's be real, it's not like the Colbys ever shied away from anything over the top. From the very beginning, it was a show that just thrived on excess. You know what I mean? Those "oh no, they didn't" moments.
Totally. It was very much a product of its time, reflecting that whole, extravagance of the 80s, all the glamour, the drama. But beneath all that, I think the Colbys also tapped into some pretty universal themes. Family, love, betrayal. Things that people connected with then and honestly still connect with today.
Yeah, it's that mix of like escapism and real life, you know? It's what keeps us coming back to soap operas even all these years later. We get so invested in these characters and their crazy lives, even if we know it's all a bit much.
Oh, for sure. And Colby's definitely gave us a lot to be invested in. But speaking of investment, I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Hmm.
The show getting canceled. What happened? What led to such an abrupt ending for a show that, at least on paper, seemed to have it all?
Right. It's the question that fans have been asking forever. Was it the storylines, the pressure of trying to be as big as Dynasty, or was it something else entirely?
Well, the truth is probably a little bit of everything. The ratings were good at first, but not what the network wanted. And the Colbys always had big shoes to fill coming after Dynasty. I don't think viewers were ready for a Dynasty without, the Carringtons.
Plus, think about how expensive that show must have been to make. The sets, the costumes, all those big name
Oh,
actors.
absolutely. It all adds up. And when the ratings don't match those expenses, well, that's when you run into trouble. It's a classic TV story. Sometimes even the biggest, most ambitious projects,
Hmm.
they lose out to the bottom line.
It does make for a kind of bittersweet legacy, doesn't it? The Colbys season 2 had so much promise, so much intrigue, so many amazing moments, but it ended before it could really hit its stride.
Yeah, but maybe that's what makes it so interesting. It's a real time capsule of a specific moment in TV history.
Yeah.
It takes you back to a time when networks were willing to take chances, to push the envelope a little, to just see what would happen if you took the drama as far as it could go.
And sometimes even further. It
Exactly.
reminds us that those unfinished stories, the ones with all the what ifs, sometimes those are the most captivating ones of all.
Isn't that what being a fan is all about? Getting invested, coming up with your own theories?
Absolutely. It's been so fun revisiting the Colbys season 2 with you, a show that was truly one of a kind. They weren't afraid to be different, to embrace the unexpected, and definitely weren't afraid to leave us wanting more.
It may have been short-lived, but the Colbys Season 2 definitely earned its place in television history. Still getting people talking after all these years?
And that's something that most shows would honestly kill for. So, to all you Colbys fans out there, keep those fan theories coming, keep those memories alive, and who knows, maybe someday we'll get those answers. Until then, happy watching.